The evacuation ships of the Kalani drifted through the void like wounded birds, their hull plating scarred and their engines barely functioning. Inside the lead vessel, Elder Cora pressed her four-fingered hand against the viewport, watching the endless darkness that had become their only companion. 3 months had passed since their homeworld burned, and in all that time, not a single civilization had answered their distress calls. The Kalani were dying, not from violence or disease, but from something far worse in the galactic community: irrelevance. They possessed no rare minerals, no advanced technology, no strategic location worth defending. When the Ravagers had come for their world, the great powers of the Galactic Council had performed their calculations and reached the same conclusion. The cost of intervention exceeded the value of preservation. Captain James Walker stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, reviewing the latest sensor data when his communications officer spoke up. "Captain, we're picking up a distress beacon. It's using an outdated frequency, barely registering on our systems." Walker turned from his command station. "Origin? 3 light hours from our position. The signal matches Kalani transmission patterns." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about the Kalani situation. The Council had made their position clear at the last assembly. The mathematics were simple and cruel. Defending a species with no economic or military value would drain resources needed elsewhere. The member races had voted, and abstention had won by a landslide. "Sir," the navigation officer said quietly, "our orders are to proceed to Station 7 for resupply. Any deviation would need to be reported to command." Walker walked to the main view screen, hands clasped behind his back. Through the transparent aluminum, stars glittered like diamonds on black velvet. Somewhere among them, ships full of refugees drifted in desperation. "Lieutenant Torres," Walker said, "what's our current humanitarian supply status?" "We have emergency rations for 10,000, medical supplies for half that, and enough temporary shelter units for a small colony." "And our fuel reserves?" "Sufficient for a detour, sir, but it would require rationing to reach Station 7 afterward." Walker nodded slowly. The choice before him wasn't really a choice at all. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council only 50 years ago, still considered newcomers by species that measured their membership in millennia. Earth's voice carried little weight in council chambers, but humans had brought something else to the galaxy, something the older races had forgotten in their centuries of cold calculation. "Helm, adjust course to intercept those ships." "Maximum safe speed, sir?" The navigation officer's voice carried surprise. "Command will want an explanation. Then we'll give them one. We're responding to a distress call. That's what humans do." The Horizon changed course, its engines flaring brighter against the cosmic dark. As they approached the Kalani fleet, the true scope of the catastrophe became clear. 17 ships, each designed for a crew of hundreds, now packed with thousands. Bioscans showed failing life support systems, depleted food stores, and medical emergencies throughout the fleet. Elder Cora could barely believe the sensor readings. A ship was approaching, and not just passing by like all the others. It was coming directly toward them. When the human vessel appeared on their screens, many of the Kalani began to weep. They had learned enough about galactic politics to know that humans were considered naive, their empathy a weakness that would eventually be bred out through interaction with more pragmatic species. "Kalani Fleet, this is Captain Walker of the UES Horizon. We're here to help. Prepare to receive supply shuttles and medical teams." Cora's translator struggled with the response, not from linguistic issues, but from disbelief. "Human Captain, surely you know the Council's decision. We have nothing to offer in return for aid." "Elder Cora, with respect, we didn't ask what you could offer. You asked for help. We're here to provide it." The supply transfer took 18 hours. Human medical teams worked without rest, treating injuries and illnesses that had festered for months. Emergency rations were distributed. Life support systems were patched and reinforced, and most importantly, hope returned to eyes that had grown dim with despair. But Walker knew this was only a temporary solution. The Kalani needed a home, not just supplies. As his crew worked, he opened a channel to Earth Command. Admiral Brooks appeared on his private screen, her expression already showing she knew what was coming.
"Captain Walker, I've been monitoring your deviation."
"You know this will have consequences." "I understand, Admiral, but I have a proposal. The Kalani need sanctuary. Earth's colony on Nueva Terra has vast unsettled continents. We could allocate a region for their resettlement. The Council will object. They've made it clear that resources spent on the colony are resources wasted. Then let them object. Admiral, we both know why humanity was really invited into the Council. They needed our numbers for their wars, our colonies for their trade routes. We've played by their rules, but this is where we draw a line. Brooks was quiet for a long moment. Behind her, Walker could see the blue marble of Earth through her office window. I'll take it to the President. But James, understand that this could isolate us politically. Respectfully, Admiral, if our politics require us to abandon refugees to die in space, then those politics need changing. The communication ended and Walker returned to the bridge. His crew had been listening, and he saw something in their faces that made him proud. Determination. Resolve. The same expression humans had worn throughout history when told that compassion was impractical. 3 days later, as the Horizon escorted the Kalani fleet toward human space, they were intercepted by a Council enforcement vessel. The sleek ship, twice the size of the Horizon, belonged to the VRIX Coalition, one of the Council's founding members. Human vessel. The VRIX commander's synthesized voice echoed across the bridge. You are in violation of Council Directive 779. The Kalani are designated as a non-viable species. Cease your escort immediately. Walker stood from his chair. VRIX vessel, we are conducting a humanitarian mission in accordance with Earth's sovereign policies. We intend to continue. Your government agreed to abide by Council decisions when you joined. This action constitutes rebellion. No, it constitutes independence. The Kalani ships are under human protection now. The VRIX ship powered its weapons, though did not target them yet. It was a warning, a show of superior force meant to cow the smaller human vessel. But Walker had studied history, and he knew that every great change began with someone saying no to an unjust order. All hands. This is the captain. Battle stations. The Horizon was outgunned, but her crew moved with practiced efficiency. Shields raised, weapons charged, and most importantly, every scanner and recorder activated. Whatever happened here would be documented. Human vessel, you cannot seriously intend to fight. Your ship would be destroyed in minutes. Perhaps, Walker replied. But those minutes would be broadcast to every human colony, every Earth ship, and every citizen of our species. Do you want to be known as the ones who fired on a ship protecting refugees? Because I assure you, Commander, humans have long memories when it comes to such things. The standoff stretched for long minutes. The Kalani ships huddled closer to the Horizon, like children seeking protection. Elder Cora watched from her bridge, unable to comprehend that someone would risk so much for strangers who could offer nothing in return. Finally, the VRIX ship powered down its weapons. This matter will be brought before the full Council. Your species will face sanctions. We'll face them together, Walker replied. That's what we do. The VRIX ship withdrew and the journey continued. When they reached Nueva Terra, the entire colony turned out to welcome the Kalani. Temporary shelters were already being erected, farmland allocated, and integration programs established. The humans worked with an energy that confused the Kalani, until Elder Cora asked a human coordinator about it. Why do you do this? Your people will suffer for helping us. The Council will restrict trade, limit your expansion rights, possibly even expel you from the chamber. The coordinator, a young woman named Lisa, smiled. Elder, can I tell you something about humans? We're a strange species. We've fought wars over resources, ideology, and territory. We've done terrible things to each other. But we've also done something that, as far as we can tell, is unique in the galaxy. We've learned from our mistakes. Every time we've turned away from those in need, history has judged us harshly. Our ancestors who refused refugees fleeing war, who calculated the cost of lives in economic terms, who chose convenience over conscience, they're not the ones we celebrate. She gestured to the landing Kalani ships, where human volunteers were already helping evacuate the sick and elderly. The ones we remember, the ones we tell stories about, are those who opened their doors when everyone else closed theirs. Those who said yes when the world said no. That's who we choose to be now. The resettlement of the Kalani became a defining moment for humanity and the galactic community. The Council did impose sanctions. Trade routes were restricted and humanity's expansion permits were suspended. But something unexpected happened. Small species, those without power or influence, began reaching out to Earth. Not for military alliance or trade agreements, but for something simpler. friendship with someone who had proven that principles mattered more than profit. Within a year, humanity had formed the Coalition of Mutual Aid, an alternative to the Council's calculated indifference. It started with 5 species and grew to 20 within a decade. The Kalani, given time to recover and rebuild, revealed an unexpected gift for terraforming, turning marginal worlds into gardens. Their techniques, freely shared with their saviors, allowed humanity to transform previously uninhabitable planets. Captain Walker retired years later, and at his farewell ceremony, Elder Cora spoke. She was older now, her people thriving on Nueva Terra and 3 other human colonies. "The galaxy called us worthless," she said, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "Every race looked at us and saw only cost without benefit, until humanity looked at us and saw something else entirely. They saw people. And in that moment when Captain Walker changed course to answer our call, he didn't just save the Kalani. He reminded the galaxy that some things matter more than mathematics, that compassion is not weakness but strength, that the measure of a civilization is not in its power but in how it uses that power." She paused, looking directly at Walker. "Every race forsook us, calculated our worth, and found us wanting. Until humanity said, 'Not on our watch.' Those 4 words changed everything, not just for us, but for every small voice in the galaxy that had been told they didn't matter enough to save." The ceremony ended with thunderous applause, but in the council chambers, debates raged. The human example had disrupted centuries of established order. More species were questioning the cold equations that had governed galactic society. The Vrix commander who had confronted Walker that day filed a report that would become famous in later years. Its final line read, "We have encountered a species that refuses to accept that compassion must yield to convenience. This will change everything," and it did. The transformation wasn't immediate or without cost, but it was inexorable. Humanity's stand for the Kalani became a catalyst for a broader movement. Species began to question why survival had to be earned rather than assured, why help came with a price tag, why the galaxy had grown so cold. The change started small, with individual captains making choices similar to Walker's, with colonies opening their doors despite official disapproval, with young members of ancient species asking why things had always been done this way. It grew into something larger, a philosophical shift that would take generations to fully manifest, but whose seeds were planted that day when a human captain received a distress call and made the only choice his conscience would allow. Years later, when historians wrote about the transformation of galactic civilization, from calculated indifference to active compassion, they would mark its beginning with a simple entry. Captain James Walker of the UES Horizon responded to Kalani distress signal despite council prohibition. When asked for justification, he replied, "They needed help. We could provide it. Everything else is just noise." The Kalani flourished on their new worlds, their children growing up alongside human children, their cultures blending and enriching each other. They became farmers and scientists, artists and engineers, contributing not because they had to prove their worth, but because they were given the chance to exist and thrive. And in the schools of Nueva Terra, human and Kalani children learned the story together, a simple tale that carried a profound truth. Every race forsook them, until humanity said, "Not on our watch." It became more than history. It became a promise, a declaration that in this part of the galaxy at least, no call for help would go unanswered, no species would be judged worthless, and no one would drift alone in the dark. The galaxy had learned something from humanity, something that couldn't be measured in trade routes or military might. They had learned that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't a weapon or a resource or even knowledge. Sometimes it's just someone willing to say, "Not on our watch."